Book of Heaven, Volume 1, Part 7. That morning was precisely the first day of the year. So he drew his most pure lips to mine and poured a most sweet milk. He kissed me. He took a ring from within his side and said to me, "Today I want to show you the ring I have prepared for you, for when I espouse you." Then he told me, "Tell the confessor that it is my will that you continue to stay in bed, and as a sign that it is I, tell him that there's a war between Italy and Africa, and if he gives you the obedience to continue to suffer, I will not let them do anything. On either side, they will reconcile." In the very act of his speaking these words, I felt surrounded by sufferings as if by a garment, and I was unable to free myself by myself. I thought to myself, what will the confessor say? But it was no longer in my power. That milk which Jesus had poured into me produced in me such love for him that I felt myself languishing, and I felt such satiety and sweetness that after the confessor came and I came round from that state and the family brought me food, I felt so full that the food would not go down. But in order to do the obedience, which wanted it so, I took a little bit, and immediately I was forced to bring it up, but mixed with that sweet milk that Jesus had given me. And Jesus, almost joking, told me, "What I gave you was not enough? You're not content yet?" I blushed all over, but immediately I said to him, "What can I do? It's the obedience." When the confessor came, he started to get upset, telling me that I was disobedient, or he would say to me, "This is an illness. If it were something from God, he would have made you obey. Therefore, instead of calling the confessor, you should call the doctors." When he finished speaking, I told him everything that the Lord had said to me, as I said above, and he told me that it was true that there was a war between Africa and Italy. We'll see if nothing happens. And so he was persuaded to letting me continue to suffer. One day, after about 4 months, the confessor came and told me that news had arrived about the war between Africa and Italy, and that without doing any harm to each other, on both sides they had reconciled. So the confessor remained more persuaded, and he let me stay there in peace. Then my sweet Jesus would do nothing but dispose me to that mystical marriage which he had promised me. When I was in that state, he would make himself seen sometimes 3 times a day, sometimes 4, as he pleased, and sometimes it was a continuous coming and going. He seemed to be a sweetheart who cannot be without his spouse. This is how Jesus was with me, and sometimes he reached the point of telling me, "You see, I love you so much that I cannot be without coming. I feel almost restless, thinking that you are there suffering for me, and you are alone. Therefore I have come to see if you need something." And while saying this, he himself would lift my head. He would place his arm behind my neck and would embrace me. And while holding me like that, he would kiss me. And if it was summertime and it was hot, he would send a refreshing breath from his mouth, or he would take something in his hand and fan me. And then he would ask me, "How are you feeling? Don't you feel better?" I would say to him, "Being with you, in whatever way one is always fine." Other times then, if he saw me very weak because of the continuous being in those sufferings, especially if the confessor was coming at night, my lover Jesus would come, and in seeing me in that state of extreme weakness, to the point that at times I felt myself dying, he would draw near me, and from his mouth he would pour milk into mine, or he would place me close to his side, and from there I would suckle torrents of sweetnesses, of delights, and of strength. And he would say to me, "I really want to be your everything, and also your nourishment of the soul and of the body." Who can say what I experienced, both in the soul and in the body, from these graces that Jesus would give me? If I wanted to tell them, I would be too long. I remember that sometimes, when he would not come quickly, I would lament to him, telling him, "Oh, please, oh, holy spouse, how could you make me wait so long? I could not endure any more. I felt myself dying without you." And while saying this, the pain I felt was so great that I would cry. And he would compassionate all of me. He would dry my tears. He would kiss me. He would hug me and say, "I do not want you to cry. See, now I am with you. Tell me what you want." I would say to him, "I want nothing but you, and only then will I stop crying, when you promise me you will not make me wait for so long." And he would say to me, "Yes, yes, I will make you content." One day, while we were in this contrast, and the pain was so great that I could not stop crying, my good Jesus told me, "I want to content you in everything. I feel so drawn toward you that I cannot do without doing what you want. If up until now I have removed from you the external life and I have manifested myself to you, now I want to draw your soul to me, so that wherever I go, you may come as well. In this way, you will be able to enjoy me more and bind yourself to me more intimately than you have done in the past." One morning, I don't remember too well, but I think that about 3 months had passed of my continuously staying in bed. While I was in my usual state, my sweet Jesus came with a look all lovable as a young man of the age of about 18. Oh, how beautiful he was! With his golden hair, all curly, he seemed to enchain my thoughts, my affections, my heart. From his forehead, serene and spacious, one could admire the interior of his mind, as from within a crystal, and one could discover his infinite wisdom, his imperturbable peace. Oh, how I felt my mind, my heart becoming serene. Even more, before Jesus, my very passions are knocked down and do not dare to give me the slightest bother. I believe, I don't know if I'm wrong, that one cannot see this Jesus, so beautiful, if one is not in the most profound calm. So much so that the slightest breath of disturbance prevents one from receiving a sight so beautiful. Ah, yes, at just seeing the serenity of his adorable forehead, the infusion of peace that one receives in the interior is so great that I believe that there is no disaster or war most fierce, which does not appease itself before Jesus. Oh, my all and beautiful Jesus, if for the few moments you manifest yourself in this life, you communicate so much peace in such a way that one can suffer the most painful martyrdoms, the most humiliating pains, with the most perfect tranquility. It seems to me a mixture of peace and of sorrow. What will it be like in paradise? Oh, how beautiful are his most pure eyes, sparkling with light. It is not like the light of the sun, that if one wants to look at it, it hurts our sight. No. In Jesus, while it is light, one can very well fix one's gaze on it, and by just looking at the interior of his pupil of a dark sky blue. Oh, how many things they would tell me. The beauty of his eyes is such that one alone of his gazes is enough to make me go outside of myself and make me run after him by ways and by mountains, through the earth and through the heavens. One single glance is enough to transform me into himself and make me feel a certain something divine descend into me. Who can tell then the beauty of his adorable face? His white complexion looks like snow tinted with a color of roses, the most beautiful ones. In his rosy cheeks, one discovers the greatness of his person, with a most majestic look, fully divine, which strikes fear and reverence. And at the same time it communicates such intimacy that, as for myself, I have never found anyone who would give me the least shadow of intimacy that my dear Jesus gives, neither my parents, nor the confessors, nor my sisters. Ah, yes, that holy face, while it is so majestic, it is also so lovable, and that loveliness attracts one so much that the soul does not have the slightest doubt of being welcomed by Jesus, as ugly and sinful as she may see herself. Beautiful also is his nose, which descends to a very fine point proportioned to his most sacred face. Gracious is his mouth, small but extremely beautiful, and his finest lips of a scarlet color. While he speaks, he contains such graciousness that it is impossible to describe it. Sweet is the voice of my Jesus. It is gentle, it is harmonious. While he speaks, such a fragrance comes out of his mouth that it seems that nothing like it can be found on earth. It is so penetrating as to penetrate everywhere, one feels it descend from the hearing to the heart, and oh, how many effects it produces. But who can say everything? Then it is so pleasant that I believe that no other pleasures can be found, as many as are those that one can find in one single word of Jesus. The voice of my Jesus is immensely powerful. It is operative, and in the very act in which he speaks, he already operates that which he says. Ah, yes, beautiful is his mouth, but it displays its beautiful grace more in the act of his speaking, while one can see those teeth so clear and so well arranged, and his breath of love comes out, igniting, darting through, consuming the heart. Beautiful are his hands, soft, white, most delicate, with those fingers so artfully crafted, and he moves them with such mastery that it is an enchantment. Oh, how beautiful you are, all beautiful, oh my sweet Jesus. What I have said of your beauty is nothing. Rather, it seems to me that I have said a lot of nonsense. But what can I do? Forgive me, it is obedience that wants it so. By myself, I would not have dared to say one word, knowing my insufficiency. Now, while I was seeing Jesus in the appearance already described, he sent me a breath from his mouth, which invested all of my soul, and it seemed that, with that breath, Jesus was drawing me after himself, and I began to feel my soul going out of my body. I really felt it go out from all parts, from my head, from my hands, and even from my feet. Since it was the first time that this was happening to me, within myself I began to say, "Now I die. The Lord has come to take me." When I saw myself out of the body, the soul had the same sensation of the body, with this difference, that the body contains flesh, nerves, and bones, while the soul does not. It is a body of light. So I felt a fear within me, but Jesus continued to send me that breath and told me, "If being deprived of me gives you so much pain, now come together with me, for I want to console you." And so Jesus began his flight, and I began mine after him, and we went around through the whole vault of the heavens. Oh, how beautiful it was to stroll together with Jesus. Now I would lean my head upon his shoulder, with one arm around his shoulders and the other hand in his hand. Now Jesus would lean on me when we reached certain places that were inundated more with iniquity. Oh, how my good Jesus suffered. I could see with more clarity the sufferings of his adorable heart. I could see him coming, almost faint, and I would say to him, "Lean on me, and let me share in your pains, for my soul cannot bear seeing you suffer alone." And Jesus would say to me, "My beloved, help me, for I can take no more." And while saying this, he would draw his lips close to mine, and he would pour such bitterness that I would feel mortal pains when feeling that liquor, so very bitter, enter into me. I would feel as if many knives, pricks, arrows were piercing me through. In some, an atrocious torment would form in all of my members, and as the soul would go back into the body, it would make the body participate in these sufferings. Who can tell the pains? Jesus himself, who was the witness of it, because others could not mitigate my pains, since I would be in that state of loss of consciousness, and they would wait for the time when the confessor would be present, because then they would mitigate also at the call of obedience. So Jesus alone could help me when he would see that my nature could not take any more and reached truly the extremes, such that there was nothing left for me but to breathe my last. Oh, how many times death made fun of me, but the day will come when I will make fun of her. So Jesus would come, he would take me in his arms, he would draw me close to his heart, and oh, how I felt life come back to me. Then he would pour a most sweet liqueur from his lips, and in this way the pains would mitigate. Other times, while he would take me around together with him, if there were sins of blasphemy against charity and others, he would pour those poisonous bitters. If then there were sins of dishonesty, he would pour something of a stinking rottenness, and when I would return into myself, I could feel that stink so well, and the stench was such that it would revolt my stomach and I would feel faint. And sometimes when taking food and afterwards when I would bring it up, I could feel that rot come out of my mouth, mixed with the food. Sometimes then, he would bring me into churches, and even there, my good Jesus was offended. Oh, how awfully those works reached his heart. Holy works, yes, but done roughly, those prayers empty of interior spirit, that piety, false apparent, it only seemed to give more insult than honor to Jesus. Ah, yes, that holy, pure, upright heart could not receive those works done so badly. Oh, how many times he lamented, saying, "Daughter, even from those people who are said to be devout, see how many offenses they give me, even in the holiest places. In receiving the very sacraments, instead of coming out purified, they come out dirtier." Ah, yes, how much pain it was for Jesus to see people receiving communion sacrilegiously, priests celebrating the holy sacrifice of the Mass in mortal sin, out of habit, and some, a horror to say it, even out of interest. Oh, how many times my Jesus made me see these scenes so painful. How many times, while the priest was celebrating the sacrosanct mystery, Jesus is forced to go into his hands, because he is called by the priestly authority. One could see those hands dripping with rot, blood, or smeared with mud. Oh, how pitiful then was the state of Jesus, so holy, so pure, in those hands which struck horror at the mere sight. It seemed he wanted to escape from between those hands, but he was forced to stay until the species of bread and wine would be consumed. Sometimes, while remaining there with the priest, he would come hurriedly toward me, all lamenting, and before I could say it, he himself would say to me, "Daughter, let me pour it into you, for I can take no more. Have pity on my state, which is too painful. Have patience. Let us suffer together." And while saying this, he would pour from his mouth into mine. But who can say what he poured? It seemed to be a bitter poison, a fetid rot, mixed with a food so hard, disgusting, and nauseating that sometimes it would not go down. Who can tell, then, the sufferings that this pouring of Jesus produced? If he himself had not sustained me, I certainly would have died. Yet he would pour in me but the least part. What must it be for Jesus, who contained tons upon tons of it? Oh, how awful sin is! Ah, Lord, let everyone know it, so that all may flee from this monster so horrible. But while I would see these scenes so sorrowful, other times he would also make me see scenes so consoling and beautiful as to be enrapturing, and this was to see good and holy priests celebrating the sacrosanct mysteries. O God, how high, great, sublime is their ministry! How beautiful it was to see the priest celebrating Mass, and Jesus transformed into him. It seemed that it was not the priest, but Jesus himself that celebrated the divine sacrifice. And sometimes he would make the priest disappear completely, and Jesus alone would celebrate the Mass, and I would listen to him. Oh, how touching it was to see Jesus recite those prayers, do all those ceremonies and movements that the priest does. Who can say how consoling it was for me to see these Masses together with Jesus? How many graces I received, how much light, how many things I comprehended. But since these are past things, I don't remember them too clearly, so I keep silent. But as I am saying this, Jesus has moved in my interior and has called me. He doesn't want me to do so. Ah, Lord, how much patience it takes with you. Well then, I will content you. Oh, sweet love, I will say a few little things, but give me your grace to be able to manifest them, because by myself I would not dare to utter one word about mysteries so profound and sublime.